Packers jumping around. They rush 4. Plenty of time for John. Now squeezes, steps up in the pocket. LA can run inside the 10. Head first. He dives off the 5-yard line.
65 horsepower trap. That might pop wide open, Rats.
It's in there! Is that there, Rats? Nice run, baby. Yes, sir, Rats.
Oh my goodness, what a fire intro. That was epic, everybody. Welcome to the Wild Wild West podcast. I think this is the only AFC West podcast on the planet with the representative of every team. Maybe the only one on the planet. There may be like 2, who knows. But this is one of the top ones. And we got Richie of MHRT Network representing the Denver Broncos, Coach Defense of Lockdown Podcast representing the Chargers, and then we have Jacob Millam of the Arrowhead Addict representing the Kansas City Chiefs. And Jacob has his Andy Reid headset on. Yes, you do?
Yep. You know what? I'm just going full. I'm ready for Halloween right here. Like Richie was just saying, I need a cheeseburger to hide behind this thing right here. But I ate that one before the show started. So sorry about that, y'all. Got a little
real quick.
This is great. This is foreshadowing the Halloween episode. So we already know what we're going to do for the Halloween episode because we're going to keep doing this every single week, right? We're going to try to do this every week.
Absolutely.
I forgot to say I'm Wi-Fi Willie of the Raiders Rundown. Some of you guys know that. If you guys are just getting here, man, make sure to subscribe to any channel you're watching this on and also like the video. It really does help us out in the long run. But first, we have breaking news today. And, when it's off season, it's never breaking news that's like a big trade or a big off season. Once we get into April before the draft, the breaking news is just that there's a contract extension is all we have. So Derek Carr has signed a 3-year extension worth $121 million. The details of that are a little shaky and the guarantees are a little confusing. But basically, if you count next year, the Raiders are basically paying $40 million a year for Derek Carr. And he's basically going to be the quarterback for the next 3 years. They have an out before 2023. Really, they have an out after the Super Bowl in which they could get out of this contract. Now I'm surprised to see that. I just want to go around and ask you guys. We could start with Rich and then go with Jacob and Coach. What do you think about this contract? It just from your perspective, is this a good deal for the Raiders? And what do you think about Derek Carr in general?
I think he's a fantastic quarterback, and you'd be silly not to extend him because the alternative, especially in this year's draft and even in all the free agents and stuff looking thereafter, is not looking great. So I thought you guys made the right decision. I'm curious and interested, I guess, as to why Derek would have agreed to the contract structure of an out at the end of or coming into the 2023 season. It seems weird to me. Because he's finally got Devontae on the team. He's been those two guys are best friends by all accounts, from what I could tell, or at least very close, if not best friends by all accounts. And it just seems that why would you want to go away? Why you finally are together? Keep that marriage going and have at it. Right. So it seems very weird, and it does make you wonder though if Adams might be next in terms of a contract extension where they're going to backload Derek but front load Devontae maybe.
Right now, they have a lot of guaranteed money for Devontae Adams. I think he's basically under contract, fully guaranteed until up to the 2025 season. Shockingly, he's only $8 million against the cap this year. Wow. We'll clarify that. Yeah. But it's because it's over $30 million in guarantees. So there's that.
Yeah, it just seems weird how they had that structured. You figured they could backload one and front load the other, right? Like to balance the two, top players. But anyways, love the signing. I think you guys made a good decision because the alternatives are not good.
Yeah, for as much as we all rag on Derek Carr, I mean, I have him like I put him in a top 12 quarterback status. I think
Fair.
he is certainly well above average, in my opinion. He has done pretty well with the talent that's been around him in Oakland/Las Vegas. The only reason why I could see a out before the 2023 season is if him and McDaniels don't really gel at all. Like if there's a big conflict there, or maybe there's something going on behind the scenes that we don't know about yet. That's the first reason I could think of. I think it's a little bit of an overpay. I would have liked to see more like the 35 million range per year, but that's just per year stuff. You know, we need to see more of these contract details to really see where the meat is.
Right.
Okay. Well, yeah, I'd like to sign him. I mean, as much as I can heap praise on a rival quarterback, I'm going to heap praise on Derek Carr. I like Derek Carr. He's a very good guy. On and off the field, you know, it's one of those things where you like him as a person and as a quarterback. I think he can get the job done. I think he's a franchise quarterback. I'm with Jacob in saying that I think he's a top 12 quarterback. Now, where he lands at 12, you can debate yourself, debate us, who you ever want to debate. But, you know, we want to land him at in 12. But definitely like the contract. I think it inspires a lot of faith for the team, in my perspective, because you're locking up Devontae long term and you're locking up Derek long term. So you have your basis of what your offense is going to look like for the next 3 to 4 years. So I think that inspires the team, inspires leadership, and inspires, you know, faith in the team to say that we're going all in on offense. We're going to make, you know, we'll really try to make a run at this thing. You know, and it could attract other players coming in, you know, in the future, in the next couple of years of free agency, say that, you know, we know they're going to be there, so let's go there and play with them, especially if they have success early on. So I think there's definitely a good job by the Raiders in locking up their guy, and with all the misgivings and all the turmoil about how Gruden was flirting with other quarterbacks the whole entire time that he was there. You know, and Carr kind of was, you know, he I mean, I give him credit. He definitely put on a brave face. I'm sure he didn't like the fact that he was talking about shopping Derek Carr every offseason and he wasn't his guy and all this stuff. McDaniels came right in and said, "You're my guy, sign you long term, and we're going to keep this game rolling." And so I like the deal. I really do.
There is a rumor that the Colts are heavily interested in Derek Carr this past offseason, but, you know, they don't have a first-round pick. So who knows if he was even shopped, you know, and now everything's fine and dandy. One thing about Derek Carr that he said today is that he was prepared to play on his $19 million contract this year with no guarantees, even if he got no extension. I don't know if I believe that. I think he says that now that he's got an extension, but I don't know if he would have straight up not played. So what I will say, you know, Patrick Mahomes, $45 million a year is the average value for him. We know he signed the massive $500 million contract, but we know these aren't really like, you know, $500 million contracts. There's a way for the Chiefs to get out of Mahomes' contract after 2025, I believe it is. And then Justin Herbert, his contract extension is going to come up, I believe it is next year, right? Or coach defense, if I'm not mistaken.
Well, he's playing on his third year, and he has most likely a fifth-year option because he's a first-round draft pick. So we're looking at 2 years down the line at most. But if they're smart, they would sign him early.
They would sign him early. And then Russell Wilson, from what I know, there's no extension ever since he was traded from the Broncos. They still have to work something out. So I guess maybe just for each of your guys' teams, we'll start with Rich. Do you see a change in Russell Wilson's contract? What do you project he would make? And then Patrick Mahomes, would you see a restructure happening in 2025? What could that look like? And Justin Herbert, how much are you going to have to pay this guy? Because the NFL loves this guy. He's all over TV.
So I was actually thinking originally when we first brought in Russell Wilson with our original cap space that we had, that we might have actually attempted to do something this season with Russell Wilson. It's now looking more and more along the lines of us probably looking to do something next year or next offseason with Russell Wilson. We just don't have the cap space for it this year. We just don't. So I think that we're going to be looking at something next offseason. I think it's pretty much a given that we're going to be looking to extend them. And I do also think that part of that is going to come down to Russell Wilson coming back and working with George Payton to say how long he wishes to truly play for. I mean, if you saw any of the videos with Russell Wilson coming out of both the Denver Broncos and even directly through Sierra and Russell Wilson's social media, it was on both. You're going to know that they both wanted to come to Denver. I didn't realize how strong his ties were to Denver, but he was originally drafted in the MLB by the Rockies. And apparently the day after he was drafted by the Rockies, his dad died. And I didn't know this. I didn't know the ins and outs of everything here. So I thought this was fascinating just for me to know a little bit more about our quarterback now. Is apparently a lot of the Rockies players reached out to Russell and kind of were a bit of a safety net and support system for him. And he never forgot that. I had no idea that he felt so strongly about Denver as a result of that time. And that says a lot about him in terms of that he's continued those lifelong friendships and still remembers all of that. So I think it'll get done next year. I'm a little bit hesitant to say the numbers because I think that he's made a lot of money, so he might be willing to kind of ebb and flow his contract to try to win as much as he possibly can. Kind of how the way that Tom Brady might have done it with the Patriots a little bit to try and win as much as he possibly can with the Denver Broncos.
All right, fair enough. Look, I don't see a big restructure on the horizon with Patrick Mahomes. A lot can change between now and when that time comes. They have kind of kicked his cap hit down the road a little bit. They did it last offseason. They did not restructure him this offseason, so he's getting his full salary or his full cap hit, if you'll say. It peaks at $59 million, and it is a disgusting amount.
Brutal.
That is in 2027, his age 32 season. So a lot can change between now and then. I mean, this cap is just going to keep on rising. So I don't know. There's a lot of factors for Mahomes. Is Andy Reid still around? Is Brett Veach still around? How well has the team built around him cheaply? I'm not even gonna. I would lean there's not going to be a restructure, but that's just me. Coach, what do you got for Herbert?
Well, it all depends on who the person is. Where when it comes up for their first contract, the rookie deal is going to be the rookie deal. Set numbers. You don't really have any say so on what your hardcore cap numbers are going to be with your rookie deal. When that first deal comes up, it depends on what type of person you are. Are you about money or are you about legacy? And if you're really trying to get your money up front, you say, hey, man, I don't want to play 8 years. I don't want to play 16 years. I only play 8. So I'm going to get the max amount of money I can get in 8 years, and I'm going to be done playing football. So you think in that regard, then he's going to want every bit of dollar that the Chargers can offer him or anybody's going to offer him to get it. But from Justin's perspective, I think that he's a team guy. I think he's, all about winning. Everything is about legacy. He cares nothing about records and being the highest paid quarterback or highest paid anything. He wants to win. So I think that he's going to take a deal that's going to be friendly enough that he can be protected, he can have weapons, and he can have a defense that's going to be able to stop people. So I think that his deal will be I guess you could say middle of the pack when it comes to competitive offers. So anywhere between, I would say 30 to 35 million average. I would think that when he, if you sign him early, if you wait till the very end of it all, and then we start seeing $50 and $55 million contracts come out for Lamar and Kyler and all these other people getting their contracts up to due, then you might be up against it. But if you do it now, if you do it in his third or the fourth year, kind of like what they did with Josh Allen, then you could get away with saying that I'll give him a lot of guarantee money up front. You lower his cap number, the first 3 years, and it would just go all in for the first 3 years of his contract and say that we're going to, maximize our talent, maximize our, the weapons around him and his O-line, and say that we'll figure it out after the fact. But I think that, he's not going to demand $50 million from the Chargers, I don't believe. I think that anywhere between 30, 35, maybe $38 million, on the high end, that on average per year, again, with most guaranteed money up front, then he'll sign for that.
He might not let himself get paid less than Derek Carr, though. If I'm Justin Herbert and I see Derek Carr's amount, he might even just do the thing, where they go $1 million above the other guy. You know what I mean? It might be one of those things.
Even if it's $1, as long as I'm making $1 more than Derek Carr, we're good.
The trend that I see between all of us, though, and I think this is every single fan of every NFL team, they want their quarterback ultimately to take a Brady deal. Everybody wants,
everybody wants that.
You're inclined to think that you hope that person will go that route. So Brady really has changed the game in a lot of ways in terms of contracts. And one thing that you mentioned, though, about people wanting to maximize the amount of money as players in particular, especially when their contracts are up, I think the draft kind of creates this situation where it's very difficult for a player to take a team-friendly deal after you spent 4 years on a rookie contract, right? Like Hunter Renfrow, for an example, for the Raiders, this is his first year where he's ever made more than $1 million in a year.
That's
and
true.
he's a Pro Bowler. So like because he was selected in the 5th round, you were and most jobs aren't like this. Like if you get hired to be like a janitor at the local school, you're not locked in for 4 years, and like you know, like in that certain way where you can't renegotiate. So, what do you think? Do you think QBs would in particular wouldn't go for the big money if they were able to renegotiate their contracts early on in their career, maybe even immediately after drafted? What do you guys think? Just
Yeah, it just depends on who the person is. I really feel like that if they really feel like they have a legitimate shot at winning a championship, and that's what they're going for, because I think that's what Russell is all about as well. Just to speak, not just to speak on my team, but another team in this particular podcast. He's all about winning. So that next deal is going to be catered around him keeping his receivers, keeping his tight end, keeping his O-line. You know, make sure they draft well. And you know, I'll get paid, yes, but I need people around me because I don't want to deal with what I dealt with in Seattle, because that was the biggest reason why he left there. So it really just depends on, you know, what your situation is. So, you know, right now in the Chargers situation, we have weapons, you know, and we're looking to get younger in certain spots. So we could literally go 3 or 4 years, you know, with developing the young talent that we have, and you know, using Keenan Allen and Mike Williams as our primary threats, and just, you know, utilize that and just keep running back in that regard until such things change. But it just really just depends on who the person is, because some people are just money hungry. I really feel like that's why Tyreek Hill is not in Kansas City anymore. He was about the money. He wasn't about winning. I got that one ring and I'm out. I need to maximize my dollars before I'm done. So I think that's where it lands.
I agree.
Yeah.
I agree. I just do. And I think there's 2 types of players in the NFL. There are those that are wanting to win as many championships as they possibly can, while making good money in the process, or great money in the process. And then there's the flip side. And it's very rare that you end up with like a Von Miller type. So Von Miller was fortunate enough to make a big money contract with the Broncos, get traded to a contender like the Rams,
Right,
win another championship, and then immediately get picked up for a massive contract by the Buffalo Bills, who are a contender in and of themselves.
right. He parlayed $200 million contracts. How do you do that as the edge rusher?
Yeah. Like, well, he was a freak to begin with, so even a degraded Vaughn is still well above average by any standard. 100%. Full stop. Period. Right. 100%. But the point being, though, is most players are not like Von Miller. Most players they're kind of an A or B. They're in it for the championships and they want to kind of go to a team that works. So you see some guys near the back end of their career go for like vet minimums on teams just to get a ring because they haven't been able to before. And then you have other guys like Tyreek Hill who said, I got my ring. Now I'm going for all out bags of cash. I don't care about winning another ring because I already got one.
Right. And you go from a cannon arm quarterback to a water pistol quarterback. But that's
my gosh. Biggest downgrade. But yeah, that is a whole nother conversation. Yeah, look, if you're looking at the grand scheme of things, the projected rise of the cap hit and the rise in Mahomes' contract, it kind of parallels itself. I'm not saying it parallels exactly, but it's similar at least.
Right.
And so Mahomes, he tried to lock himself into a long-term deal so that the team knew, you know, hey, we can restructure you this year, or we can restructure you in 2024, however you want to do it. I think he took a similar deal. It is still a big money deal. Oh my gosh.
I had to laugh at that. That's hilarious. I'm glad you saw that. I'm glad you saw
that. Guys, this is not a comedy show. Okay? This is a football show. Right. Okay, comedy comes after in our green room, before and after the show, but I appreciate the comedy. Thank you. It was great.
It was great.
I lost everything. I lost everything on that.
Oh
my God.
Jacob, I believe the word you're looking for is tanking with Tua.
Oh, wow.
Yes.
Wow. That's a good one.
And that's not a podcast name. That is like the legitimate situation down in Miami.
That's what's happening, right?
Please continue.
Call them the Miami Flounders, okay? Because they're flopping around on the beach right now. Anyways, look, I think Mahomes did a somewhat team friendly deal, but not. Golly,
That's on fire. The chat's on fire. I just want to let y'all know.
I know. Yeah, Chad is going wild right now. Look, Willie, get us back straight, man.
We're talking about quarterbacks, but there's still a lot of good players out there. I'm actually surprised that Stephon Gilmore hasn't been signed. I'm surprised that Melvin Ingram hasn't been signed. I'm surprised that Tyrann Mathieu hasn't been signed anywhere. There's just a lot. You could go down the list. There's a lot of people you'd be surprised. Tyrann Mathieu, though, is, I think, the most famous one. I think every NFL team, every YouTuber, NFL YouTuber, Twitter, a blog writer, they all have, Tyrann Mathieu to insert team name, right? Tyrann Mathieu to Eagles, Tyrann Mathieu to Raiders, to Broncos, to everybody. So I guess just to ask you, Jacob, starting off, why is Tyrann Mathieu not on the team? Do you think it was a good decision for the Chiefs to move on? And then maybe for the rest of you guys, we'll talk about where you guys think he might go.
Okay, first, I don't think he's on the team because he initially wanted a big money contract from Kansas City. He said last offseason, he said during the season that he wanted to be the highest paid safety in the NFL. So we're looking at, 16, 17, $18 million for an aging safety? No, I wouldn't pay that. I don't think there's any chance coming back. I do just want to say I don't believe him that he would have taken that Justin Reed contract. And if he would have, then blame your freaking agent for playing hardball with Kansas City, in my mind. Now, the defense is going to be a lot worse without him, though.
Thank you. We appreciate it. It. Everybody else appreciates that.
Yes, a lot worse. Okay, there's a reason why his stats were down. Yes, he's not he's not flying around as much as he once was, but it's also because people were avoiding him, and you were cutting off a whole half the field just with Mathieu there. So the defense is going to be a lot worse without him, but I don't think there's any way that he should command, a multi-year $14, $15 million deal at this point in his career. Coach, would you give him that?
Well, no, I wouldn't give him that, but I would definitely pay him something, because there's something in regards to having talent and then being a commander on the field. That's an intangible that everybody doesn't have. You can have all the athletic ability in the world, but like you said, to your point, people they avoided him on the field. They didn't want to go anywhere near him because it could come back the other way. Yep. That was definitely a nuance that people don't honestly, truly, as a casual fan, recognize. So I would think that anybody that has any type of issues in their back end of their defense would honestly, truly benefit from Tyrann being there. But I also think there's an issue with too, where he wants to either play in the division somewhere, fit somewhere in the division to repay the Chiefs all the drama that they gave him in this past offseason. I do believe he wants that. They're trying to see where the draft lands at, and then who has the money left over to be able to pay him at least on a 1-year deal. I think that's his biggest. That's what he really is driving at. That's what he really, really wants, in my opinion. But regardless of that, he wants to be in a contending situation, kind of like Vaughn. So if a team in the division can't absorb him in a contract situation, he wants to go somewhere where he knows he's going to win. He don't want to go to the Lions or the Saints who are rebuilding. They don't want to go to the Vikings. He wants to play with a team that has a legit shot at the ring. Because he is he's in his late 20s, 30s. He's 30 now. So
he's pushing 30.
He's pushing 30. So he's looking at it like, I want to be able to maximize my years. So it's either a contending team, A, a division team, B, a contending team. And that's really where it lands. And he's not going to be in a rush because he knows his worth and his talent. He knows he'll be an asset to anybody that's going to have it.
Yep.
I like Mathieu. I've always liked him as a player. I thought he's been a ball hawk. He's been someone that has been a dependable player. And I also think that he's been an underrated leader on the Chiefs defense, which I think you're going to sorely miss. And as much as you want to balk at paying him a lot of money, or even the highest paid in whatever he wants to try to target, first off, I don't think that was ever going to happen, but certainly no agent is ever going to tell their player, do you what I want you to go out and do? I want you to tell the team that you will take a steep discount on your next deal. Just go do that. It's just not going to happen. So it's not going to happen. That doesn't mean he's going to get the highest paid deal or anything like that, but no agent worth their salt is ever going to tell their client to say something like that publicly. So I actually really like Matthew. I think that his best situation is to right now go on a 1-year deal for a team that needs safety, a starting safety like right now, today, and go on a team. I actually think the Broncos would be a pretty good fit because we have a young guy on our team in Caden Stearns. And having the mentorship of Kareem Jackson and Tyrann Mathieu on the team to a young guy like Caden Stearns, and then at the end of this year, move on from both Mathieu and Kareem Jackson would probably be a good idea for the Broncos to then, after that mentorship, after having that veteran leadership, have that young guy step up into that role would be a good fit. But there's very few teams that are in a position like the Broncos where they have a young guy that's kind of already there that just needs a little bit more polish to their game. Ultimately, Matthew's probably going to be a stopgap somewhere, whether he likes it or not. And I think that'll be a bit of an issue. And he's 29, almost 30.
Thank you.
Just real quick, Ty Davis, thank you for sending some love. He's been snoozing on and off. Not sure if Willie broke down DC for his contract. We talked about that at the beginning. Basically a 3-year, $40.5 million contract a year. But there is an out after 2023. That's a big thing, that there's an out for that contract. But we'll see where Tyrann Mathieu ends up. I think you're right, Rich. It's going to be a 1-year deal somewhere, whether he likes it or not, which is crazy because he's only 29 years old. I originally thought he was in his early 30s. That's really not that old in the NFL. But that safety position, I feel like it's becoming almost like the running back of the defense, where you just see them kind of cycle in and out for safeties. However, the draft is coming in a few weeks, right? We're all excited about that. We're thinking about for the draft. It's not that exciting for me as a Raiders fan because we only have the 3rd round pick, right up top. For you, Jacob, it's probably very exciting. You have the multiple 1st round picks, that kind of thing. So let's go around and then talk about the biggest draft needs. I guess I'll start. The biggest draft needs for the Raiders, you really don't have much to work with because you are working with the 3rd round pick, but it is still interior defensive line and right tackle. We've talked about this. Tackle's a problem all around the AFC West. And when you keep bringing pass rushers, that's exactly what we need. So I would say that and a speed at receiver is what it'd be. Okay. So what about you, Rich?
I think for us, we're going to need to try and find some way of solidifying our right tackle position. I don't think it's going to be something that we're going to be able to do next offseason. So I think it'd be in our best interest to go after a right tackle if we can, perhaps in our 2nd round pick, which is at the very, very end of the 2nd round. So it's basically kind of a 3rd round pick. However, our GM has spoken about trading back up in somewhere into the higher 2nd or even the back end of the 1st. So that could be interesting. But then we also have some needs at offensive center. The MHRT Network, we've spoken on several of our podcasts just surrounding the fact that our offensive center in Cushenberry was really the weakest spot on the offensive line for the Denver Broncos. And as we move into zone blocking, which is, you need to be more mobile, you need to be more in tune at that center position. You can't just have a turnstile at the offensive center position, especially now that we've gone older at quarterback rather than having a younger guy back there like Drew Lock. So we really do need to solidify that position at the offensive center. I'd personally like to see Glasgow move to offensive center because his best year with the Lions was actually at the center spot. But we still need a long-term guy there to actually fill that gap as like a young rookie or a younger guy. So I see those two as the biggest needs. And then coming up as a close 3rd is going to be edge depth because we've kind of lost Vaughn and we haven't really retooled all of the back end depth of the edge spot. So we need some of that.
All right. So the Chargers need a few things. One of them being right tackle, as everybody has alluded to. And I want to bring up something that's very valid that I wanted to actually talk about last week that we didn't get a chance to. Right tackle is a fading position. Everybody makes money at left tackle. Everybody goes and plays left tackle. That's the elite, especially in this draft. And I call the question of whether or not guys that play left tackle can convert seamlessly to right tackle. It's not everybody that even Play Sewell struggled last year when they moved in from right tackle to left tackle to right tackle. So it's one of those things where you don't want to go out and say, I'll just take the best tackle available at whatever pick I'm at, because he may not transition well to right tackle in the sense where left tackle is his niche, and he's could be, left-handed, and he's been playing it since he's 12. He just don't know anything else, so it just may not go over well for you. But I think right tackle is a need. There were talks about moving Matt Filer, who got left guard, to right tackle. He played right tackle in Pittsburgh. I had to look at some AFC North tape to see how well he did. I'm not sure, but I think he's a really good guard. I would like to leave him there and have a right tackle come in the draft. But I would say right tackle is the most immediate and most glaring need, especially with that pass rush in our division. I also would say that wide receiver, slot receiver, speed receiver, some type of speed receiver to add that dynamic to stretch the field for Justin Herbert would be the second need. In interior lineman, a guard. If we don't bring back Odea Boucher at right guard, we need another interior lineman and a backup running back. I would say those are our biggest needs, is somebody that can spill or fill in for Austin Eckler, so we have to do the line share to work. So if he's out a week or two, because he's nicked up, we can have somebody that can fill in and still be productive. So I think those are top needs for the draft, and not having a second round draft pick kind of hurts a little bit. But it's still a scenario where we could trade back in. Say hypothetically we trade back into the 25 or 30 range in the first round and get a second round pick. I'll be comfortable with that. But overall, I think those are our biggest needs, is that we have to get a right tackle, a wide receiver, maybe the interior D lineman in the later rounds as well, because this is a pretty deep D line draft as well. So we can look at that in maybe the third round.
Let's hit pause on that right there, Coach. You see that?
I did.
Oh, we're talking about. Oh, yeah, we got a super chat directed at Coach. Bullets are the only AFC West team I don't hate. Lived in San Diego a couple of years and attended some games at the Murph. That said, we're gonna sweep you this year, from Brian. So a friendly trash talk.
Friendly chat, definitely. Appreciate the love. In a sort of a slight way.
I was gonna say, did you notice the sugar on the way in and then the slap on the way out?
There you go.
Yeah.
Right. So I appreciate you, Brian. You're my guy.
And you know what? We're all about the respectful discourse and the rivalry right here. I mean, if we can do it for an hour each week, then I feel like folks can do it in the chat. But anyways, back to team needs. Well, Kansas City doesn't need a quarterback. That's one good thing. That's really kind of about it. We have glaring needs.
Well, tight end. Now you don't need a tight end. I would say that.
I don't know. Big needs: pass rusher, wide receiver, quarterback room's really thin. Putting a lot of pressure on Justin Reed and Juan Thornhill to actually hold down the safety positions. Very little interior. Look at that hat. I like that. Very little interior pass rush. We all need a right tackle, so we need one too. Yeah. But there's a lot of needs, man.
A lot of needs everywhere. I mean, I think the Chiefs, you still have the advantage of being the winner of the division, right? The past 7 years or something like that. So, I mean, the Chiefs have always had needs every single year, but something has always kept them going each year. Is it just Tyreek Hill? Can you tell me? Is it just Tyreek Hill? Hopefully. Either way, we have Ty Davis saying, Coach D, where is your Bolt gear, bro? LOL. Hey, I don't have a Raider shirt on either.
I showed him the hat. I repped the hat while Jacob was talking. I let him know. I'm here. I got a Damon Thompson over my shoulder. I got a Chargers hat on. I got one right here. We good. I didn't have time to iron my Khalil Mack jersey today, so I'm gonna wear it next week.
I got laundry, only a few shirts, so I know how that goes. So, okay, the draft is coming up, and there's always people who you want, right? Like when the draft first started, and we had the mock drafts and the draft board, I originally was like, wow, I hope Jordan Davis falls. Obviously, he's not going to fall in the third round, right? But we all have our fantasy. Well, he wasn't going to fall. It was back when we had a late first round pick too. So I was like, okay, you know what? But obviously, he's not even going to fall in the 20s. So we have our fantasy picks, but who do you realistically think your team's going to choose? Who do you realistically think? Me, in my opinion, if I was the Raiders, even though I have a third round pick, I would trade up to maybe move up to the later second rounds and try to get somebody like Daniel Falele out of Minnesota, that big tackle. He looks like a mutant, not a human being. So that's rare to find. And why not go with the mutant? Why not go beyond human at right tackle. So that's the person that I would choose. And maybe we can go with Rich and Jacob and then Coach and see who you guys realistically think your team would pick with their first pick.
So I find it interesting you went with trying to trade up to go for a spot that you're not picking at. I actually thought that you should probably go for a replacement for your left guard, who I thought was one of the weakest spots on your line instead of right tackle, realistically in your third pick. So I had Kennard, who is a converted tackle who's projected to be a stellar left guard. And I thought he'd be an ideal pick for your team, picking in the third round, because that's where he's about projected to go. Give or take. He might be, low or high, or like low second, but early third. But I thought you might go there. For the Broncos, we have a late, like the latest, like the last pick in the second round. So I kind of picked my ideal thing, which is Falele falling, which is unlikely to happen, but on the off chance that he happens to slide into the bottom portions of the second round, he would be an ideal target for the Denver Broncos because he's bigger and mobile, but then needs a little bit of polish. So we can probably work with that with a kind of an outside zone blocking scheme to kind of get him to a spot where he can really push his way into that second level. If I'm looking at another guy who I like, who is probably more realistic, you have Lucas and Kellen Diesch, Diesch, who I actually think projects to convert from left tackle to right tackle, one of those convert guys. He is both athletic, has a lot of twitch, a lot of shift, and would be very, very good in the run blocking game, which I'm gathering we're going to be aiming to do more of as the Denver Broncos in the 2022-2023 season here coming in. So I think he'd be a good fit, depending on where tackles slide and where they end up.
All right, understood. Well, hey, for Denver, I don't know why, but I really zeroed in on JoJo Domann. Out of Nebraska going to Denver. I think he's a good value pick. And I think he could slide right into that defense and, contribute day one and really give some of that athletic profile to cover these really good tight ends in the AFC West. But for me, look, there's so many ways that the Chiefs can go in the draft. Are we trading up? Are we trading down? Are we trading both the first rounds? Are we, what are we going to do? For right now, I'm not predicting any trades. I'm just going to keep it how it is. I think the Chiefs will pick up a sliding pass rusher. Karlaftis is really sliding down draft boards right now, like across, I haven't seen him, going in the teens anymore. He's late 20s now. And this might be another point for another time. Devontae Wyatt is like all over the place. He's either going top 5 or he's going bottom 5. So I would kind of like the Chiefs to pick him up, but I think the most realistic one is going to be Daxton Hill out of Michigan. He really is going to give that secondary that versatile player that they need, especially with Matthew, probably not coming back. I won't say never, but he ain't coming back.
Come on now. Come on now. Look, I know that you're like Andrew Reid light, having dropped and gone on Weight Watchers, but I mean, at the end of the day, come on. Like,
I'm just gonna hide behind my board to cry.
There's a lot of crying in KC. If you notice, there's a lot of crying lately. You cried over Tyreek, you cried over Tyrod. I mean,
it's bad time.
And then you got Jackson Mahomes and Juju dancing on the logo. So I mean, probably KC right now, man. Really? Best thing is barbecue in Kansas City right now. Best thing is barbecue. Oh man. So yeah,
let's get back to football.
I'm sorry, sir. I'm sorry. Can't miss the time to rag on the Chiefs sometimes. But yeah, I mean, I think it's funny that it's like a half and half dynamic. Like 2 teams have first round picks and 2 teams don't in this chat, right? But I think that the Chargers will do a BPA situation if they stay at 17. I think they'll just take best player available based upon the positions of need. In a few mocks I've done and some I've seen, they've had Jordan Davis sliding down enough to us to be able to take him at 17. So I wouldn't balk at that. There's a lot of fanfare, and a lot of my guys in the chat we've been talking about Olave all day. on Twitter and in the group chat. So they love Olave. I'm a little skeptical that he'll be there because what I've noticed that about the draft, and everybody knows the league is a copycat league. So when Garrett Wilson comes off the board, the receiver's going to start falling off the board really quickly. So because everybody's like, I don't want to miss my guy. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the receiver, even though I don't necessarily need a receiver or want a receiver at this particular pick. I don't want to miss the guy that's available to me. So I'm going to do kind of what Dallas did, take CeeDee Lamb at the time when they really didn't need a receiver. So I got a feeling that Olave won't be there at 17. They've been talking about Jameson Williams being there available. I'm a little concerned about his ACL. I don't want to. He's such a dynamic talent. He's so fast that I don't want to rush him back either. So, he's been telling people that he's going to be ready for camp and this, that, and the third, but I think he needs to slow play it. So if they do take him, I think they can kind of tread water with Guyton and Mike Williams and Allen long enough for him to be fully healthy and acquire him. So I like that pick. And overall, outside of anybody on the O-line that's highly rated besides Trevor Penning, I'm good with, because that's the one guy I don't want. Because I feel like he's a walk-in penalty flag. Because I feel like that he's going to get into it a lot with D linemen. He's going to draw a lot with players, and he's going to draw a lot of penalties. He drew a lot of penalties in college. So, he wants to play bully ball with everybody. You can't do that. And especially in the NFL, college maybe get away with it a lot, but NFL, you're not going to be able to get away with it. Imagine him trying to bully Max Crosby or Aaron Donald or Chandler Jones. It's just not going to happen. It's not going to end well. And it's going to end up with a lot of, you costing your team a lot of yards. So as long as it's not him from an O-line perspective, I like Kenyon Green as an interior lineman. That's a good one to pick up. If we're going to move Fowler to right tackle, I do like that. In the later rounds, I'm hoping and wishing on a star and a prayer that somehow or another, if James Cook, Dalvin's brother, is available in the third round, we can get him. I love the way he runs. I think he's Dalvin light. I think if he picks up about 5 or 10 more pounds, he will be Dalvin Cook, because he legit runs just like him. I watched him exclusively at the combine. I watched him run a lot in his drills, and I swear I thought I was looking at Dalvin. So he's just a little lighter than Dalvin at the moment, but I think that he could honestly and truly be available. If he's available in the third round, I would take him, no question. In the corner, I would say corner is another need that we have. So if Trent McDuffie is there, I feel like if for a BPA pick, you got to take him, because he's just too good of a lockdown, corner to move off of him and not pick him, for somebody else. So if I had to choose a hard, kind of gun in my head situation, if I had to pick Trent McDuffie, Jordan Davis, or Jameson Williams, I would pick Trent McDuffie, because he's the one that can play day one. They play a lot. So I think that's our biggest aura and biggest needs and biggest ideas that are guys that I want, that we can get early on in the draft.
Or were you gonna say something, Rich? Sorry.
Yeah, I find it interesting because the one guy you said you didn't want is the one guy that I had pegged and slated as being the guy that I thought would be a reasonably good fit for your team. So I actually think that Penning can grow up when he enters into the NFL. And ultimately what you're dealing with in college is a bunch of really young males that have always been the best at whatever they've done their entire life. And I just watched Penning do a squat of something like 650 or 700 pounds.
625.
It was ridiculous.
Yeah, it was rough. It was rough.
Yeah, and sure. I think there's some legitimacy to the fact that he had some issues and whatnot in college, but ultimately what he was doing was he was playing the hothead role, and he was trying to be a tone setter. He didn't always get the holding penalties that you see from some of the other guys. And even when he did get the holding penalties, he was doing it to prove a point to the other D lineman to tell him to sit down and shut up. Which
you know what? Rich, y'all gotta have him. Y'all gotta have him. The Broncos gonna have him, and we'll take that 15 yards every game that y'all gonna give us for free when he gets penalties against Bosa and Mac.
I'm not willing to take that risk, which is why I like Falele for the Broncos. But I'm more than willing to take that risk on behalf of the Chargers.
No,
so
we're good. We're good over here. You don't like LA that much. It's too warm. You don't like LA that much. It's too warm for me. It needs a cold weather climate.
True.
Well, so now, okay, what's cool about this year is we know, because there's always these draft picks that happen. They're like, oh, they're going to be so great. They're going to be so great. Or, oh, that was a reach. You don't know. You don't know how these people are going to turn out. It takes multiple years to even have any kind of judgment about it, especially outside of quarterback, in my opinion. And now, we know what the 2019 draft class was. So I was just going to ask each of you guys, over the past 3 years, who has been, you think, the best draft pick in terms of where you got them and how much value they added to the team, and who's been the worst? Now, as a Raiders fan, this is very easy for me to answer because, number one, obviously Max Crosby has been the best draft pick of the past 3 years for our team because we got him in the 4th round. So you got a franchise pass rusher in the 4th round. There's nothing better than that. And the worst pick is either a tie between Damon Arnett because he sucked and was sketchy at the same time and getting into all kinds of trouble, or Cleveland Ferrell because we picked him 4th overall. Could have grabbed somebody like Devin White, could have grabbed somebody like Ed Oliver, could have grabbed a lot of people, even Josh Allen from the Jaguars. So that's where I would say best pick and worst pick. So I'd like to hear your guys' starting with that, Rich.
I don't know who Ricky Rodriguez is, but these jokes are hilarious. Please keep them up.
Oh my God, what is happening?
Just please keep them up. Just keep going. I'm here for that. So no, I agree. The one thing I think is really fascinating about where we're all at this year is we have 2 teams, as I think that Coach was saying, that doesn't even have a 1st round pick. And frankly, the only reason why the Broncos have a 2nd round pick is because we traded Von Miller for a 2nd and a 3rd. Otherwise, the Broncos would be in a very similar position to the Raiders right now this year. So what I think that really makes this year rather interesting for me, at least, is it forces you to go deeper into the draft, and it forces you to actually look more at players, look more at skill sets, look more at fits, all that kind of stuff. Whereas before you just have that 1st round pick and you were kind of honed in on it a little bit. Now, I will agree that the Raiders made some really surprising picks for me in the 1st round the last few drafts, but then they seem to hit really well on their 3rd to 5th, kind of in that range. Yeah. Where you guys just killed it. I mean, Max Crosby, just good job. I mean, credit where credit, just good job. He is one heck of a player, and truly deserves all the accolades he's getting from around the NFL and everywhere else. He is just excellent. Mm-hmm. But, you can't draft a guy that's meant to project as your right tackle and move him to guard.
Yeah.
Right? Because you drafted him at the level of a right tackle, and then you're now moving to a position that's technically, unless he's a top 5 at his position, which he's not, then you don't draft him as high as you did. Right. And so from the Broncos perspective, I mean, I'm not trying to, point and say, haha, because that's really the pot kind of calling the kettle black a little bit. The Broncos only in the last 2 years have started to draft a lot better. And last year we drafted really well, which I think is a credit to our new general manager. So I'm actually really interested to see what we're doing this year. But before that, when we had Elway at the helm, and there was a comment that I pulled up, that Elway curse has quickly and thankfully left the building. George Payton is now kind of the guy in charge. And I think we're going to see a turnaround in our draft. So I'm quite optimistic this year.
So that big question.
Oh, sorry. I thought I had completely spaced out there. I am so sorry. I'm just living up to that season ticket joke that good old Rodriguez is talking about there in the chat. So I'm not setting the tone very well for Chiefs fans around the world.
It's okay.
Look, that I want to do a cop out. I want to say the worst draft pick was Frank Clark in 2019 because we traded our 1st rounder to get him from the Seahawks. But right now, I'd have to say true draft pick would be Kalen Saunders. We picked him 84th overall. Just super athletic defensive tackle out of Western Illinois, and he just has not panned out. Injured really often, hasn't progressed much on the field, and just he's not in the Chiefs' plans anymore. I don't know if he'll even make this roster. But, I mean, at worst, he's a cheap body to keep around at least. I think the best pick from that year would be Rashad Fenton. We picked him 201st overall in 2019 draft. And he saw the field for multiple games his rookie year, 2020 and 2021. And he was pretty solid quarterback. You know, I'm not calling him CB1 or CB2 at this point, but I think if you can get that sort of value at, you know, outside of the top 200, I think that's a steal in my opinion.
Okay. Well, the 2019 draft for us was kind of interesting. We was a lot of buzz about who we wanted to pick, and who we actually picked was kind of a shock to all Chargers fans. I think we were in a group chat at one point, and everybody was like, "Why do we pick there? Why we pick him? This and the third." So the first pick we picked was Jerry Tillery, a defensive tackle out of Notre Dame. And this was kind of the switch between we were leaving the 34 style and going to a 4-3 style with Gus Bradley. So we're going through that transition. So I guess they felt like they needed a more of a 4-3 style D tackle. He's still on the team, so we didn't cut him yet, obviously. But I would say that particular pick I wouldn't say it panned out, but it's still I guess the story's yet to be written fully on him. I think he's developed into more of a pass rushing DT versus a run stopping DC. He struggled like much of our defense this year in stopping the run. So that's a knock on his ability. But overall, I think it might be a tie for me as far as who I think the best is. I love Nasir Adderley. We picked him in the second round out of Delaware. Outside of a bit of an injury bug, him and Derwin kind of took turns being hurt the first couple of years they've been together. But when they're on the field together, sneakily, Nas is really good. He's really good. He's an underrated hitter. He's an underrated cover guy. And I think everybody knows the name Derwin James. He's a household name, but I think Nasir can hold his own in the secondary. And I think it'll show more this year with having a legitimate corner on the outside with J.C. Jackson and a legitimate pass rush. So I think he's probably the one I actually positively love. And with a I guess your honorable mention to Drew Tranquill. We picked Drew Tranquill up from Notre Dame as well. He's a 4th round linebacker who actually ended up being a starter. He was a former safety converted to linebacker. He put on about 15 pounds and he converted to linebacker. And he's been playing inside linebacker for us for the last 3 years almost. So he was with he learned from Thomas Davis when Thomas Davis was here that one year we had him. They spent a whole year together, and he picked up the game pretty well. And I think he's a legit inside linebacker. And I think between him and Kenneth Murray, they should definitely make a lot of plays this year. So those two are my absolute positive best picks. But everybody else has been cut already. That's in the draft. So outside of the 3 games I talked about, everybody's not on the team. So there it is.
Yeah, I tried to avoid the question on purpose because I'm in the same position as Coach. He actually went right into it, which is good for you. I tried to just kind of circumvent the 2019 draft altogether. However, we did end up with Noah Fant in the first round, who I didn't like. He was a great player, but he didn't pan out for us because we just didn't use him the right way because of our offensive scheme. I think he's going to do really well with a team that's going to use him better. And ultimately, I think there's 2 players that are left from the 2019 draft that I think we did pretty well with. I think the best of them is actually going to show out this year again in Dalton Reisner. Dalton Reisner's very, very well suited for the outside zone run blocking scheme. So for the other AFC West teams that didn't think that left side of the offensive line for the Denver Broncos did particularly well last year, I do encourage you to look at the left guard on the starting side. We did interview him on MHRT podcast. It was a fantastic interview. I highly recommend you go watch it. And so he's going to be, I think, a great left guard for us this year and really prove that he's best suited for the outside zone run scheme. I did want to quickly pull out a comment here. Jeff A., 39 and a half is just a 40-year-old in denial. Okay? So let's just call that a duck, okay? A duck is a duck is a duck. Have at it.
In denial. I love that.
Okay, does Hotspot Aubrey belong to you, Willie? Because
she's probably fighting the chat for us or something.
Right now.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
I'm just saying, guy. Okay, just as a message to the chat, be civil. You guys are like, you could be nasty and crazy when it's just me on, but when we have guests, and we're all working together, we got to be nice to the other teams so we keep this going throughout the whole season. So every week, there's never a hesitation about us having an AFC West live. You know what I'm saying? Every single week. So just tell message to the chat just to be chill. But when it's just me on, feel free to just go off. It doesn't matter. But
we are here nice. So we don't get fined.
Okay, so here's a question I was going to ask you guys. I want to hear your guys' thoughts about it. I read something that said, like, this is the first time in over 40 years that 25% of the teams don't have a first-round pick. This is the first time, and the NFL pretty much started in the 70s, like the merger and everything. So really, this is kind of the first time ever that a quarter of the teams don't have a first round pick. What do you guys take away from that? And do you think something is changing with the way NFL teams approach the draft? So we'll just start with Rich, Jacob, and then Coach, if you guys want to give thoughts on that.
For sure. For sure. I think what we're seeing, and I think this year was it started last year, if we're going to be fair. So it started, the first precursor to what we're seeing this year started in the 2020-2021 year, and it's now carried over, and I think we're going to keep seeing it. I believe what we're seeing is a move for NFL players to basically force themselves out of a team that they don't want to be on. And I think that sort of mobility within the NFL was all but unheard of until 4 years ago. And largely it's only those players that are faces of the franchise. So the owners don't want a quarterback on their team who is effectively the de facto face of the franchise, who's going to go out in front of a press conference and say, I don't want to be here. I hate this team. I hate this city, and I hate the owner, because that doesn't bode well for anyone. So, and it's certainly not going to put butts in seats. So, I think when you see things like what Kyler Murray has done, I think that kind of writing is a little bit on the wall in terms of the fact that he wants out of Arizona. So he could be the next quarterback that might be a surprise kind of QB on the move sort of thing. We saw Russell Wilson this offseason come to my Denver Broncos, who it wasn't necessarily a surprise, but it certainly was a bit of a surprise that Russ landed in Denver, because that was quiet. I mean, that was quiet. And that just is a credit to both the Seattle Seahawks, Russell Wilson, and the Denver Broncos for not having any leaks in that circumstance. So I think what you're seeing is a huge, huge change. And you're going to see teams that need a quarterback go all in for a quarterback and trade multiple firsts, multiple seconds, players, etc., because they know the value of that position. And I think we're seeing that more and more and more. And I think we'll continue to see it. So I think more and more teams will not have first round picks.
Okay.
Yeah. Go ahead, Coach.
Oh, okay. Well,
sorry.
I would say you good. Now, I would say that it's all about projecting. I think that teams are projecting 2 to 3 years out, and based upon who's going to be available, because you kind of can gauge who's going to come out in the draft and who's not. You can gauge when there's a good quarterback draft. That's why we saw the upward movement in the draft last year, with people going all in and getting high picks for the quarterbacks that were in the draft room last year. And they mortgaged their future for that particular opportunity to draft a franchise quarterback. Your Trey Lances, your Zach Wilsons, your Trevor Lawrence's and such. So I think that it depends on who's coming out. I think this year is particularly intriguing because the draft is very it's good, not great. It's not a sexy draft. It's more of a defensive dominant draft. You got a lot of edge rushers. You got a lot of corners. You got a lot of linebackers. A couple of safeties.
Your name is Coach Defense. How is that not great?
Oh, well,
literally all of the best players in this draft are on the defensive side of the ball. I figured you'd be like at the ceiling, crawling around, doing a shimmy shake.
Listen, I might dance a little bit after the draft. Who knows? But
okay,
Jackson Mahomes it.
Right now, I'm not going that far. I'm not going that far. No, you never see that. Never see that. But, I mean, for me personally, it's great. I love it. That's what I'm all about defense. However, I'm just speaking from a league perspective, what the owners and the front office is thinking. Again, it's a projection. So if I'm look at it from a standpoint of, if I know I can't get a quarterback that's going to win me games this year, I'll go trade for one, mortgage this particular draft, and get the guy I want. Versus, later down, maybe 3 or 4 years down the line, where I know that a Caleb Williams or somebody like that, or a CJ Stroud or somebody like that's going to come out in the draft, I got a shot at him, then I'll line myself up and get in lockstep with the idea that I can draft him. So it really just depends on what you need, what's your biggest need, and how you're going to project yourselves into getting that person in the draft going forward. But again, if you don't need an edge rusher, if you don't need a lineman, or you don't need a linebacker or a safety, then you don't necessarily have to have a first round pick in this draft to be able to acquire the I guess you can say the roster space that you need to fill in the later rounds.
Right.
All right.
Yeah. And go ahead. Sorry.
I'm all out of sorts. I'm all out of sorts, y'all. Look, I'm gonna go with Rich on this one. I think it's more of power to the players in this, not to steal isn't that an old EA Sports like slogan, like power to the players or whatever? But anyways, yeah, it's they'll make it known if they don't want to be there, whether it be through official channels, through interviews, or social media. So if you have, let's say DK Metcalf comes out this year and say, "Hey, I don't really want to be here," what is a team going to give up for the chance to have first dibs on extending him? We've seen the Los Angeles Rams' approach to first round picks, and it paid off for them this year, honestly. So I don't know. This is a really good draft to trade out of, not altogether, but if you don't like a guy, then try to kick your picks down to next year at least, and see what you can do.
Well, you guys just cut your best defensive player in Tyrann Mathieu, so one of them at least. So does that mean you're willing to trade your 29th pick for the Denver Broncos end of second, just as a straight trade?
No, I do apologize. Okay. I don't think that works out on the draft value. I think it's a little lopsided.
All right. I actually think this is a great question.
I want to hear this.
I think it's great. And honestly, this is one of the huge benefits of having an AFC West Roundtable podcast like this, where we all play each other twice a year. We all have open questions about each other's teams. We really don't have a forum where we can ask honest questions of each other and get these types of answers from those of us who follow the team and truly know a lot of the ins and outs. This is coming from Mundungus Creevy, also known as the godfather of the MHRT podcast or MHRT Network. He asked a great question, and I would honestly and truly love to get a response to this. I think there's going to be multiple people that watch this both before and after we are live that would love to hear an answer. Who is really the offensive genius behind Mahomes? Is it Reed or Bieniemy? That is often asked, and to be honest, never answered in most cases.
This is true.
Yeah, that it is. I'm going to go straight with Reed on this. I don't think that there's anything to prove the other way. I mean, Bieniemy was not the OC when Mahomes had his MVP year.
I thought he was.
If I'm recalling correctly, I don't believe he was.
Then who was? I'm curious about that.
I swear if it was, and I'm wrong.
I thought he was. I think that was one of the things they were talking about when he was up for head coaching jobs, that he was there for Mahomes' MVP season. It's the reason why they couldn't understand why he wasn't getting a head coaching gig.
Man, I swear if I'm wrong on this. Yep, I pushed it off here. Yeah. So his first year as offensive coordinator was when he won MVP. So I apologize. That's on me. I have my numbers wrong in my head.
Yeah, it happens.
Yeah.
But I'm still gonna go with Reed. Although my main point just got proven moot. Thanks, Coach.
All right.
I'm still going with Reed. I mean, Reed's the guy who elevated Alex Smith from a game manager to, he was a fringe top tier quarterback for a couple of years in Kansas City. There's been some issues with in-game adjustments. And I believe, in my mind, Coach, you can tell me differently, but I put in-game adjustments primarily on the coordinator of that side of the ball and not the head coach, although they kind of share responsibilities. Coach, I'd like you to speak on this next because you'd probably be able to clarify it a little bit more.
Yeah, well, it's just based on the dynamic of the coaching staff. Between Andy and Eric, I'm pretty sure it is 50-50. They are in heavy communication about how to attack in-game adjustments, and I think it's ultimately Andy's call at the end. He has final say, but Eric kind of drives it. And if Andy feels like he should go in a different way, he can suggest that he just do things differently. But I think it's really it could be a 50-50 between them. In certain cases, it's all the head coach. In certain cases, all the offensive coordinator. I think that in Belichick's situation with Josh McDaniels, I think it was all Belichick's calling when it came to game management. So it just depends on the dynamic of the coordinator versus head coach. So I think that's where it lies there as far as how do you define it, in regards to who does what and when. But because like prime example for our situation, a couple of years ago we had Anthony Lynn and him between him and offensive coordinator, neither one of them get clock management right. So it really didn't matter who made the call, they both get it wrong. So that was just a disaster waiting to happen. But yeah, overall, I mean, it just depends on what type of relationship you have with your OC and your head coach, and how much you trust each other. And I think they trust each other intimately. So I think they both make calls based upon the situation. So it's just really one and the same in that regard. So in regards to the question, I would say that I really feel like if you're a Star Wars fan, to me, I think it's a Jedi Master versus a Jedi student, aka getting ready to be a master conversation. I think Andy Reid is an offensive genius. I really think he's always been that way from Philly to now to KC. But I think he's taught Eric enough, him being a former player. I think he's taught Eric enough under this tutelage where he's getting up to that point where he could rival Andy for being a dominant play caller. So I think it's just a teacher versus student type of deal. But the student can probably teach the teacher a little bit, depending on who you're talking about and what you're talking about at any given time.
Yeah, I think that's probably it. And now there's some other behind the scenes stuff that I've seen from the Kansas City Chiefs side, where Andy Reid has an open door policy where he actually even allows players to come in and put forth offensive ideas in terms of play calls and things that they see and that sort of thing. So I'm probably going in a slightly different direction than you guys are. I actually think that it's pretty much all Reid, because it's a cultural thing in terms of their defense and their offense, rather in terms of their success. So, and I actually believe that it's probably well known throughout the league that Andy Reid has a certain way in terms of how he approaches things. And I believe that is likely one of the things that has played a role in Bieniemy not having those head coaching opportunities, simply on the premise of he hasn't separated himself enough from Andy Reid optically from the outside looking in. And I think that is one of his major issues that he has, is that he hasn't put himself out there. He hasn't stepped in front of the mic. He hasn't owned certain things. He hasn't had those moments where people have been able to say, oh, that was Eric, or oh, that was Andy, because everyone knows how Andy runs the show, so to speak. And Andy's style is so eclectic, which is part of the reason why you have such an innovative offense. And frankly, it's also one of the reasons why they've done so well in the division is because they've had the players to run such an eclectic offense. Bringing me to kind of the last point that I'll make in all of this, which is I think you're going to take a major step back on the offensive side of the ball this year, because you've lost the guy that's a Swiss Army knife. Yeah. And then you've gone from a Swiss Army knife to a kitchen knife in Nicole Harmon.
Yeah, wow. That's pretty good. That's a pretty good comparison. I ain't gonna lie.
Went from an AK-47 to
but sorry, Willie. Do you mind?
No, go ahead.
So first, what were you saying about that comment earlier on about like coming in with the sugar and then you're following it up with the slack?
Right.
Like that's what that whole thing was.
Exactly what that
was. But to before Willie speaks, just to prove your point a little bit more, Rich, is that was one of the main reasons that was contributing to Mike Kafka leaving Kansas City. You know, he was the quarterback's coach and he was the passing game coordinator, and he left this past offseason for the offensive coordinator gig in New York. And one of the reasons that was kind of contributed was the fact that he wanted to set himself apart from Andy and say, I have these schemes and I have these ideas. Let me go implement them in New York and step up my head coaching resume. Something that Eric really hasn't done on his own. But Willie, go ahead.
Giants or Jets?
Giants.
Okay. All right.
I kind of like this idea of talking about why hasn't Eric Bieniemy had a head coaching job, and sort of saying like the coordinator, when your head coach leans towards your side of the ball, you're never going to get that much credit. Kind of like what Rich was saying. And I feel like comparing Josh McDaniels to Eric Bieniemy, Josh McDaniels had the the advantage in New England, where everybody knows New England, Belichick, he's a defensive-minded coach. So you knew Josh McDaniels was running that offense, and he was the highest-paid offensive coordinator in the NFL. Is Eric Bieniemy the highest-paid offensive coordinator in the NFL? No, because you have Andy Reid, right? So I think that's always going to haunt him, kind of like Rich is saying. And I also do, and I know this is kind of controversial for some people, but this is it, which is like teams have an incentive to get their coordinators hired, especially if they do meet the Rooney Rule. If they meet the Rooney Rule criteria, if you do get that coordinator hired and they become a head coach, you get 2 third-round compensated picks. So when I hear Andy Reid out there saying, why isn't anybody hiring Bieniemy? If your coordinator was so great, why would you want another team to take him away? Why would you want to do that? Well, because you're going to try to get some third-round picks. I mean, that's me being cynical. That's what I also see in this as well.
Yeah, because you also have to ask yourself the question: if Eric Bieniemy's not getting the head coaching jobs, well, how did Nathaniel Hackett and Mike McDaniel get their jobs? Because they were offensive coordinators under offensive-minded head coaches, and they never call plays. Bieniemy calls his plays in the Chiefs' office. Am I correct, Jacob? Bieniemy calls.
Yes, you are correct. Yeah,
he calls the plays. Bieniemy calls the plays.
Some of them.
Hackett and Mike McDaniel never call plays.
Some of them.
So here's the thing. Here's the thing, Coach. Do the Denver Broncos and do the Miami Dolphins want to give the Chiefs 2 third-round picks? That's what I think also comes into it and also affects as well, because both those teams that you named are AFC teams. Now, if it was an NFC team that didn't choose him, then I would be, I'd be alarmed, and I would think this is weird because you're right. Bieniemy is calling plays more than these other coordinators, but I just feel like these GMs, like they know what's going on and they're wheeling and dealing in certain ways. And I feel like that's something that's always in the background that people don't mention that much.
100%. Yeah.
Agreed.
So we have been, Rich, were you gonna say something? Sorry.
No, I was just agreeing with you, and the chat is going great. These comments are spectacular.
Raiders going to eat up the AFC West. Mic drop from Ty Davis. This is a heavy Raiders chat. Yeah, you guys have known. You guys are taking all the abuse. I'm trying to shield and protect you from the abuse here, but yeah, I'm standing over, trying to take it. That's why I say rip into me. Don't rip into these guys.
I'm happy to be ripped into. If you guys just want to rail on me the entire show, just have at it. I'm good.
If McDaniels can fix red zone play calling, be afraid of the AFC West. Thank you, Tedford. Appreciate that. Massive shout out to Coach. Your team is just so bad for so long, and you still stuck by them. That's what he.
Hey.
So, okay, Coach, what is the legacy of Phillip Rivers for Chargers fans? Now that you have Justin Herbert, because I've watched Phillip Rivers play for so long, I like Phillip Rivers in a certain way, because mainly just because I've seen him for so long in this division while my team wasn't that impressive. So what do you think is the common sentiment towards Phillip Rivers now that they have Justin Herbert?
I think it depends on how old you are. Right. Because for me, when I really in my heyday of being a Chargers fan, my stardom of being a Chargers fan, Drew Brees was there. So Drew Brees is my guy, and it's hard me being hard pressed to put Phillip Rivers over Drew Brees, although Phillip Rivers spent more time in the Chargers organization than Drew Brees did. I still wish that he hurt his shoulder, they wouldn't have moved off him in a sense, because I think he would ultimately give the organization more success. But Phillip Rivers, it really just depends on what year you're talking about. Holistically, I think he was one of the best statistical quarterbacks for the organization. But I just think that he was in a bad situation in a lot of regards, because for the entirety of his career, outside of the first few years, his O-line was bad. And having a bad O-line around a non-mobile quarterback is a recipe for disaster. Even when the pass rush wasn't as dominant as it is today, it's still a disaster when you can't protect a guy that can't move. So I think he was limited in that regard. And then if you did fix the O-line in certain spaces, the weapons were bad. So you never fully got it right. I think that you either had a good O-line and bad receivers, you had great receivers and a bad O-line. So one of those two things not together will ultimately end in moderate success. So I think that was ultimately what it boiled down. And I think that's what is always going to hang over Phillip Rivers' career, is that he was okay, not great. He made the playoffs a few times. I think he made the playoffs once, maybe twice without a Damian. So you have to look at it from that space. But we could talk all day about what the problems were: the coordinator, the coach, the O-line, the wide receivers. It was just one of those things where he just never had a good situation. And I think they are learning from that, and they're doing better by Justin based upon what they hadn't got right for Philip. So it's one of those things where Philip, walk so Justin can run, that kind of deal.
Okay.
So Rivers was two things from my perspective. One, he looked at his wife and then she got pregnant. And then two was he was the one guy that could literally rock a bolo tie and then made me actually want to wear one.
Right.
So
he made you want to be a better man because this man never cussed. I mean, he trashed.
No. For sure. It was one of those things. He played the sport that was known for basically potty mouth and four letter words were not in like a deficit in the locker room.
Right.
They were plentiful, and then you had him in all of these. No matter where he was, no matter what he did, it was, "Hi, ma'am, how y'all doing?" And it was crazy.
Listen,
and
that's a skill.
It was really remarkable, and it really was something to aspire to almost as a football fan, to say that you can go through life and go through so level in a locker room that is just like that. It was just incredible.
Agreed. Now it's a skill for me because if you can get underneath somebody's skin without cursing, you're next level. You're next level. I mean, he pissed off Yannick Ngakoue and a bunch of other people on numerous occasions and never cussed at him. Never cussed at him. I was like, that's a skill for me. That's a skill. So he holds that, and he holds that in my high regard for that aspect of nothing else. That he cannot cuss and get underneath your skin. So he's a GOAT for that.
Oh, for sure.
I enjoyed Philip Rivers. He was on a rival team, and I still kind of respected him in that way. I was young for most of his great years in San Diego, so I don't know. I really liked him. I really wish he would have succeeded even in Indianapolis. I thought that was a great situation for him. But it was just wrong time for him. So I hope he's enjoying retirement. Isn't he coaching right now for high school?
He's coaching his son's teams. Yeah,
that's gotta be a weird dynamic.
It is. But yet again, a coach that can coach you without cursing. That's another thing. That's another skill.
Yeah, that's true.
He's tailor-made for it, man.
This is a great question.
Yeah.
Just basically, how would you rank the division? This is Acosta. Which team has the best QB to wide receiver one and edge rusher combos? How would you rank the division? I don't know who wants to. I mean, I guess I can go. Obviously, I'm going to give the Raiders number one because we have two edge rushers who are highly paid, and I got to give Devontae Adams. Khalil Mack, he's dealt with injuries, and maybe Gruden moved on from him for a reason. Who knows? But either way, we got that QB wide receiver. Underneath that, I would give it to the Chargers. I will say that next. I'm making fun of Khalil Mack, but he's still pretty good against the run for an edge rusher. And you still got Keenan Allen and Mike Williams there. Then I would still slide it to Denver just because they actually have edge rushers, and the Chiefs don't really have that or a receiver. But the Chiefs still have Chris Jones. I mean, we're not talking about that, but if you did include that, I would slide them over the Broncos. But then I'm gonna have to go Chiefs last and Broncos third on that one.
I like it. I would flop my picks. I would say the Chargers because if you line up Justin and Derek, I'm going to go Justin. I think Keenan Allen and Devontae are a push, but I think the tandem of both. I think Keenan and Devontae is a push when it comes to talent and route running. In production, let's not act like
they wouldn't say that last year. They wouldn't say that last.
I'm sorry. You just said Keenan Allen and Devontae Adams are a push.
It's a push. Yeah, it's a push.
How much alcohol have you had?
I'm listening. I'm all Gatorade. I'm all Gatorade today. I'm fully.
Is that an Irish Gatorade?
No, it's not.
Okay. All right. I just had to ask.
Scary. But I would say that's a push, and I would give again if we get Khalil Mack under Brandon Staley, Khalil Mack and Joey Bosa. It pushes them slightly above the Raiders as being one, and I'll give Raiders 2, Broncos 3, and Chiefs 4.
All right.
If I'm gonna jump in, jeez. I can't believe you just said Keenan Allen and freaking Devontae Adams are a push. Anyways,
Todd Davis is my buddy today, boy.
Look, I'm speaking about a rival team in both cases here, and I just can't bring myself to that. Like that is like mind blowing to me. But I mean, Devontae Adams is an unbelievably special receiver who has a knack for developing chemistry with his quarterbacks, and I think that cannot be undervalued, underappreciated, or understated. So I will just say I leave it there. But I actually think that a lot of you guys are not necessarily factoring in Randy Gregory on the other side now for the Denver Broncos. And I'm being honest. So, I mean, I think that it should be deemed as a consensus, I think, from most, that the Chiefs, because they haven't invested heavily in the edge rushers, are fourth in the division. So I think that can be kind of a uniform thing that we can technically all agree on.
They're murdering me in the chat, by the way. I just want to let y'all know they murdered me in the chat. By the way, it's funny.
Yeah. But I think the other thing with the Chargers is that you guys haven't really invested heavy necessarily in your edges, because pass rush and edge are not the same thing. So I want to take this question on its face value and not just say that when you say edge, you mean edge rushers. That when you say, pass rush rather, when you say edge, you actually mean an edge rusher. So if I look at our teams, I believe the Raiders and the Broncos are like a 1A, 1B kind of team. And if I'm going to look at actual true edges as an outside linebackers, I will give the edge, pun intended, to the Denver Broncos. Not because I'm a Broncos fan, but because Bradley Chubb and Randy Gregory are actually edge rushers, pure edge rushers at the outside linebacker position. And I think that overall they are higher quality edge rushers than the others in the division. And when I factor in Russell Wilson into the equation as a top 5 quarterback within the NFL, I think is a fair comment to make. I think that gives the edge to the Broncos with all things considered. And I do want to be respectful. The Raiders are likely the number 2 in all of those categories when you factor them all in when you're looking at teams overall in the AFC West.
Yeah, I'm with all of you. The Chiefs have to rank last in this, primarily because of wide receiver and edge rusher. They're simply, I mean, what you're going to compare Frank Clark to Joey Bosa and Randy Gregory and Bradley Chubb and Max Crosby. I mean, you just can't do it. He doesn't even hold a candle to them right now. It is absolutely ridiculous. So I'm going to say this. It takes 2 to make a quarterback and wide receiver chemistry. And I say the Raiders and the Chargers have that edge. So I am going to put Denver 3rd in the division, but not by much. Okay, because if Randy Gregory can actually pass a drug test, maybe Denver can get past 500 this year. Okay, hey, just maybe.
There are 2 things in his favor. 1, pot is legal in Colorado. And 2, the NFL has actually gone super lenient on THC and marijuana drug tests. So even if he does want to get blitzed, he's probably going to get away with it now.
Okay.
Bring back. Okay.
Well, I was
left
worried.
out. His receiving core isn't up to snuff though. When he put his guys first, his receivers are all unproven. His best receiver, Cortland Sutton, has been hurt. He hasn't put up numbers like Keenan Allen or Devontae has. So that disqualifies it for me. But I might be in the minority.
Oh no, let me finish this up real fast. First, I do want to say I was a little bit worried about the whole drug test stuff because if I remember right, today is Josh Gordon's birthday. So got a little concerned there. But anyways, I would have to put for the combos. I have to put Oakland over the Chargers, or Oakland. Jesus Christ! I have to put the Raiders over the Chargers. Yeah. Is it the same thing anymore?
I mean, I feel like it is. People get offended by that, but I feel like it is.
Right.
Look, I would put the Raiders over the Chargers, but not by much. Really not. It's pretty slim pickings there. But there's a big gap right now between 3 and 4 in the division. Just because we don't have a freaking edge rusher.
But you have Chris Jones. The Chiefs, at least, so that's why this question was like, They should have said just like defensive lineman, because then I think the Chiefs rank a little higher because you still have Jones.
I agree.
Right.
You know, yeah.
I agree.
Now that
Yeah.
we've shit on the Chiefs, let's go a little.
The problem is the question was explicit and it said edge, right? And
Right, yeah.
And I if I'm going to be honest, and I'll give the commenter and the question itself more credit than it probably deserves, but ultimately, I think what they really meant was pass rush.
Right.
And if we're going to talk overall pass rush, then I think those rankings change. But I wanted to simply take the question at its face value and say, you said edge, so I'm responding with edge because I don't want to guess and then get it wrong. So I wanted to give an actual literal answer to the question that was asked.
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair.
Yeah, and Ty Davis, Coach D, where do you get your crack from responding to equating Keenan Allen with
The
Devontae
greatest thing is that
Adams?
was a super chat, and that was fantastic.
Yeah, it was an awesome super chat.
Oh, like
Ty
that was
Davis is
fantastic. Like you
awesome.
sent a super chat for that. I appreciate. That wasn't through our channel, but that was spectacular. Thank you.
Indeed. I'm glad to entertain you every Wednesday at 7:30.
Well, hey, so maybe that is a good time to wrap up, though. This is going on every Wednesday at 7:30 Eastern time, 4:30 Pacific time. This is a good time to wrap up, right? I didn't know.
Oh yeah,
100%. Okay. All right. So hey, shout out Richie from MHRT Network joining us, Coach Defense of Lockdown Podcast, and Jacob Millam of the Arrowhead Addict. Shout out to all you guys. Follow these guys if you're a fan of their respective teams, even if you're not, even if you want to just stay clued into the AFC West. These guys follow their teams way more closely than you're going to find on some ESPN reporting and stuff like that. Trust me. So shout out to all you guys, and thank you guys for joining us. And we'll see you again next week on the Wild Wild West podcast. Yeah.
Have a good one, guys.
Peace, yo.